Today's Fast Friday is in two different parts. First, the education, then a personal story. Hi everyone and welcome to Pal to Tech. Most of you know by now that Fujifilm cameras shoot in both JPEG and RAW format. JPEG's the universal standard that's found all across the web, social media, and offers a decent file size and the ability for you to control the quality of the file compression. Now, RAW format is just that. It's the raw image format coming straight from your camera's sensor. And with any RAW file, you need to have a software program that can demosaic, read, and translate the RAW file into an image that you can see, edit, and manipulate. Now, on some Fujifilm cameras, most notably the X-T4 and the GFX line, you also have an option to perform an in-camera conversion to TIFF format. TIFF stands for Tag Image File Format. And actually, TIFF format has been around for a long time, and it's usually seen on more expensive medium format cameras. Now, to be able to get a TIFF file from, say, your X-T4, you first need to be sure that you are actually shooting in RAW in the first place. And this is because the camera needs that RAW file to begin with in order to make the conversion to TIFF. Now, you can convert your RAW images to TIFF in one of two ways. You could either do it in the camera, or you can use the Fujifilm RAW converter software. To do it in camera is very easy. Assuming you've got your SD card in there with the images that you've shot, simply press and hold down the image playback button. Once you're able to see and play back the images in the camera, now go ahead and press the Q button. And you'll see a menu that looks just like this. Here you can do all kinds of things if you want to convert your RAW file into a TIFF or a JPEG. Options like changing the white balance, adding noise reduction, even processing with an HDR setting. What you want to look for is file type. And here you've got three options. First, you could convert into a JPEG. But for a TIFF file, you've got two options, either 8-bit or 16-bit TIFF. Obviously, 16-bit is going to contain a lot more image data, but it's going to be a much larger file size. However, for the purposes of this demo, that's the one I'm going to choose. Once you're all finished, you simply press the Q button on the back of the camera to convert the file to a TIFF. One final step though, and don't blow this. Once it's been converted, you need to press the OK button on the back of the camera. It's an extra step. You need to do it. And you're all finished. The new TIFF file is stored on the SD card on the back of the camera. Let's have a look at the actual files themselves. Okay, you've got three files right here from the camera. A JPEG, a RAW, and the TIFF that we had converted. Have a look at how big the TIFF file is. I mean, look at that. It's huge. It's much bigger than the RAW file. So let's try something out. Let's open up the RAW file from Photoshop and then save it from Photoshop as a TIFF and see what the difference is. Okay, here I am in Photoshop, and I'm going to convert it to 16-bit so that it more closely matches the file size of the TIFF that was 16-bit out of the camera. Now I'm going to go ahead and save it out as a TIFF from Photoshop. And you get pretty much the same size. You see that from the camera versus converting a RAW file to a TIFF in Photoshop. So let's see what happens now in Lightroom when we make a few adjustments with the TIFF versus the RAW file. Okay, so I've got all three files now in Lightroom. The first is the regular RAW file straight from the camera. The second is the TIFF version that I converted in camera. And the last one is the TIFF version that I converted from Photoshop. Well, one thing I noticed right away is that there is more detail in the TIFF file. Have a look at this. See that right there? And compare it to here. It's not a huge difference, but it's definitely noticeable. I am also seeing slightly less noise in the TIFF. Look at this. Here versus right here. You see that? It's not a huge difference, but it's definitely there, especially if you're pixel peeping. Same thing with right here. I'm now going to jump into 800% to look for worms. Yep, there's a few little wormies right here compared to right here. But I'm in at 800%, okay? Just saying. Little worms right here and right here compared to here. But just to be clear, pulling back at 100% or 200%, you're not going to really notice much of a difference at all. What I did find interesting was I thought that the TIFF file that came out of Photoshop was noticeably worse. There's definitely more noise and more worm artifacts in the Photoshop TIFF than the TIFF from the camera. Actually, this kind of sucks considering both of these files are the same file size. I mean, have a look at this. It's clear as day, more noise. Okay, now let's see what happens when we make some basic adjustments to the RAW file from the camera versus the converted TIFF from the camera. Okay, so these adjustments have now been applied to both the TIFF and the RAW file. I'm still liking the RAW file better, but maybe a little bit more latitude in the TIFF file. As you can see here and here with the extra detail, not so washed out. Same with right here and right here, you see that? But overall, I found the difference between editing these two types of files to be pretty much negligible. Okay, I've had enough pixel peeping for the day. So the question becomes, why would you want to use TIFF in the first place? I mean, why not? Since you're performing an in-camera conversion, why not just convert to JPEG and use that, save that to the SD card? After all, JPEG files are smaller and they can both be read and edited on just about every device on Earth. So the best way to think of converting it to TIFF in camera is that it gives you all of the editing flexibility of a RAW file, except that you don't need to worry about your editing software having to read and translate the raw data. Now, I didn't test this in a huge number of files, but it would logically make sense that since the camera has already demosaicked and processed the raw file when it exports it out as a TIFF, you don't need to worry about worms or problems reading the raw file since the TIFF file, all that's been done already. However, in the real world, unless you're zoomed in to 800%, I honestly didn't see a lot of difference in the photos that I shot. However, I'm sure there would be some examples with shots with extra foliage or certain low light shots that you would see a bigger difference. So that comes down to the question, would you ever use the camera conversion or the Fujifilm desktop software RAW converter to convert a RAW file into a TIFF format? Well, really, I can only see a few scenarios. First would be if the client requests it. Be careful with that one because that's essentially giving the client the negative, the original, with all of the latitude of editing as you would have with a RAW file, more or less. The second reason I can think of using TIFF would be that you honestly don't have a decent program on your workflow that could read or process RAW files. And the final reason I can think of would be perhaps you're worried that someday software vendors will stop supporting the Fujifilm RAW file format, and you want to make sure that your images are kept in a more universal TIFF format. However, I honestly don't see that happening. It's not a concern that I share, and therefore, for all of the reasons I mentioned earlier, I don't use the in-camera TIFF conversion, at least in my workflow. Okay, that wraps up the educational portion of this video. So for those of you just looking to be educated, you can leave now because I'm going to segue into a more personal part of this video. Originally, what I'm about to show you was going to be the only video for today, and I decided at the last minute to include this RAW versus TIFF video that you just watched as part of today's Fast Friday. So this next segment was the original Fast Friday I was going to show this week. Here it is in its entirety. This past weekend happened to be Mother's Day, and my mom wanted to take a family photo of everyone. Fact of the matter is, I haven't been working on any videos, and I've hardly been in the studio. You see, my mom came out to visit me for the past few days, and I haven't really seen or spent any time with her in the past 3 years. It does happen sometimes that family can grow apart. Conversations turn awkward, and then days turn into weeks, weeks will turn into months, and months will turn into years. And you then get to the point of wondering, well, if we finally do get together again, oh, it's going to be so awkward and uncomfortable. And so you keep pushing that back and avoiding it. Also, this past weekend happened to be Mother's Day, and my mom wanted to take a family photo of everyone. I got so stressed out about doing that because I later realized that I just wanted it to be perfect. I wanted her to be proud of the type of, photo that I could get. So I took my Fujifilm X-T4 camera with a 16 to 55 millimeter zoom lens on it. I had 2 C stands just like this. One of the lights The key light was an Amaran 200D, and the fill light was a Godox 150 watt, this one right here. So the photo was taken right in my living room, and the first thing I did was grab a color reference, set the white balance on the camera, and then I started to frame the shot. I wanted the two windows to be in exactly a symmetrical location, and we had a couch in the middle, and I was planning on putting my family standing in the center with the two windows kind of framing them. And so it was up and down and turning and leveling on the tripod. And the guests, mainly my mom and family, are starting to get like, okay, come on, let's go, let's get the picture. I'm kind of like, okay, wait, hold on, I gotta get this right. And I was noticing that the fill light was bouncing off the wall, which was a beige wall. And I didn't like the color. There was something off on that was bothering me. So I had my wife in the shot, I was color balancing off her skin tones and trying to adjust it. And I realized while I was setting it up that because I've been primarily shooting nothing but YouTube videos for the last 3 years, I am so video lighting centric. It looked like a studio. It looked like I lit up a set of a newsroom or a studio. It was too controlled. It was too, I guess you could say, well lit, right? It didn't look natural. The more I tried to get the shot perfect with regard to symmetry and lighting and shadows in the right places, the more impatient the guests were getting, the more kind of annoyed my wife was getting, and the more frustrated I was getting because I was rushing because I knew everybody was waiting and I was just trying to get it set up properly. I didn't realize it at the time, but it's just so obvious. I wanted my mom to be proud of me. I wanted to just get the best shot. I wanted to take a photo that she would look at and just go, wow, oh my gosh, what a great shot. Oh, I love this. That's what I wanted more than anything. And so after another 15 minutes of me adjusting C-stands, moving lights, trying to bounce them, trying to direct, pulling them back, changing the wattage, hooking one of the lights into an app and adjusting it from there because it was so high up. One thing after another, 15 minutes goes by. Finally, my wife says, enough. Enough. And she grabs the tripod with the camera on it and moves it all the way forward so that it's like half the distance in there, and then it just called everybody over, right? And said, just sit down on the couch. We're going to have fun with this. Who cares if it's symmetrical? Who cares if the color's right? Who cares if the white balance is correct? Who cares? And so she brought everybody over there, and I start taking the pictures, and we start acting really silly and funny and making goofy faces, and my son and I were goofing around on the couch. So once we were done, I took the SD card out of the camera and I decided I am going to print this photo using one of these. So I printed the photo out and I gave a copy of it to my mom for Mother's Day, and she absolutely loved it. She loved it. It was, you should have seen her face light up. That's really powerful if you're going to shoot photos of your family. There is some point at which you have to let go. Do the best you can. There are a lot of mistakes you can fix in post, but at least get the shots. It's more important to get the shots. It's more important to make the memory, and it's more important to spend time with the important people that you care about. So that was a huge photography wake-up call for me because I am such a perfectionist and it got me nowhere. The other thing was I just wanted to spend time with my mom. On the second to last day that she was here, she and I just went out for a drive around, and I brought my drone with me, and we went to this bridge, and I showed her how I was able to fly. I think I was showing off. I showed her how I was able to fly this drone up and capture some footage of us and footage of the lake. And then we came back to my house, and I took the SD card out of here. We sat down together, and she watched me edit this thing. I didn't have very much footage. It was not the best editing job I've ever done. And you know what? It was awesome. It was her seeing me put together a video. It just suddenly connected. It was like 3 years we had never been apart. It was so wonderful to do that with her and to have her. I just wanted her to. I wanted her to be proud of me, and to see me edit this. I think all of us on some level want our parents to be proud of us and to share with our parents something that we love and are passionate about. This was the first time I was able to do that. I just haven't been in the mindset to just be in the studio. My head has been elsewhere. So that's why there's no video this week. I don't feel entirely comfortable presenting my personal life to YouTube. I'm doing it for one reason only, and that is if you have a parent or two parents that are still alive out there somewhere, and it's at all possible for you to reach out to them, do it. Do it before the sun sets today. You will regret it if you don't. Well, I hope you found this video helpful, and I am going to be signing off now. In the meantime, have a great weekend, and I'll see you in a new video next week. Take care.